So let's talk about timber framing as a worthy goal. There's a lot worse pursuits we can do as far as how productive they are and how they make us feel and what they do for our family and what they do for our friends and so on and so forth. Two things I'd like to talk about. One is what can you get from it and how you can have fun with it. And the second is what wood itself as a building material, the benefits of using wood. Let's start out with the bigger one, which is how it's going to make you feel, what you can do for having family gatherings, that sort of thing. It's a way to personalize. If you might be thinking about timber frame, you might be just very curious. You may be well on your way and know all kinds of things that you want and don't want with timbers and your style. But wherever you're at, the thing that's really cool about using wood and in particular exposed beams and timber framing to kind of create a statement is it can be as muted or grand as you want. It can be art on a big scale, and it can really help resale value, which is kind of minor. Builders have used our packages, and they say they get like a 35 to a 50% return on the money they spend with us. In other words, if we can create that balance, that beauty, that power, their houses sell faster and they make money off of it. So that could apply to what you're doing in your project. But I look at that as kind of a minor benefit. The bigger benefit is if we can capture, who you are and what you're about with how beams are kind of placed and balanced and designed and constructed, and you just feel good in that space. And people come over and they say, wow, it's just I just like being here. That's just worth a ton. So that's kind of the big benefit of it. And then you can have fun with the decisions and all that, provided you read section 1 of our book, Get Your Head On Straight. Really, it doesn't have to come from our book. There's a lot of books on there out in the market that talk about figuring out what you're about and getting clarity. We've boiled it down to some simple, fast exercises because we know people are busy and they don't want to reinvent the wheel for everything they do. So that is the biggest reason to consider timber framing, acquiring timbers, having some fun with it as a worthy goal. The second one has to do with wood as building material. So things have kind of come in a full circle. Way back in the day, it was wood. Stone was used as building like castles and that sort of thing, but they were drafty and damp and it wasn't ideal. People liked wood. And we've done a lot of things now. Now we have three main building materials. We have concrete, steel, and wood. Those are the big three. So concrete and steel, there's a book out there called The New Carbon Architecture. And this book makes a really strong case for using wood to help with climate change. And in the book, they talk about how steel and concrete, the energy consumption to make concrete, to make steel, and what it does for climate change has a really high cost, and it's not renewable. A lot of information about wood being renewable. It's warm, it's easy, and then when the building's done, it takes less energy to use, heat and cool because it's not transferring thermal bridging energy or warmth or coolness through the walls, through the roof. So that renewable resource also has one other aspect that I never really thought about until I'd read this book, The New Carbon Architecture, and it talks about carbon sequestering. Sequestering is a big word, but it just means that the carbon, if you're using wood, that is carbon that is not going to rot or burn, kind of hold up there, safe, stored. And so it's not going out into the environment at the same rate as the carbon that's used to create, concrete and steel. And I'm not saying that concrete and steel are the villains. I just think that if there's a choice, let's try to use wood a little more. There's a time and a place for concrete and steel, but that is going to just help out big. There's CLTs, cross-laminated timbers, and they're building big skyscrapers out of them. I think they're up to 14 stories. And what they are is they're a bunch of like 2x6s that are cross-laminated, and they build big walls. That is the structure, the floor, the roof. It's a ton of wood. So there's a lot of carbon sequestering done there. But just say, for example, that you decide to do this, you pursue timber framing, you get done, you get this great space, it feels good, people come over, and it's just, you and your wife know life isn't perfect, but it's just something you've done together, and you've created memories there, and it's just part of you and part of that stability. And then you can say, hey, look at how much carbon I've got sequestered up in those beams. Kind of fun, right? So there's my plug for timber framing.